Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to The Lost. A quick note before we start things off. The Netherkast, as well as The Lost, are brought to you in participation with TestYourMight.com, which is just about the finest MK site on the interwebs, so give them a check. We ourselves have a Facebook group and a Discord server. If you ask to join the Facebook group, we will approve you, and you can hop in there, as well as the Discord, and engage in friendly communication with a bunch of great MK fans. Good people. You can ask us questions. Please feel free to do so on any one of our many segments in the Discord server. We'll be happy to get to you eventually. Without further ado, let's get to it. I am Razor, he is Shad, or is that the other way around?
It might be the other way around. I can neither confirm nor deny.
I've had me some of that strong Canadian beer you may have heard so much about. I'm feeling pretty good today. Not in an alcoholic kind of way.
I'm drinking the American piss water you've heard so much about.
Christ. I've had maybe 3 or 4 beers while I've been in the States in my entire life, and it never ceased to amaze me how absolutely terrible it all was. It literally is like drinking water for me. It was so strange growing up. I used to hear people talking on TV shows, "Oh, I just had about 12 beers and I'm feeling a little bit tipsy." And I'd watch all the people around me and they'd have 3 or 4 and they'd be falling over drunk, and some sort of super race of Americans with incredible alcohol tolerances? What's happening? At that point in time, I didn't quite understand the differences.
Yeah. It's because the beer is shit. You can sell more of it that way, you see.
Yes. Oh, God bless this land that I love.
If it takes you a whole 6-pack to get drunk, then you'll buy the whole 6-pack instead of just 3 or 4.
That's how the great American beer gut is formed.
It's yeah, that's what does it. I can confirm.
As I age, I have less of a fear of these kind of things now that I understand, like, the physics at work. I don't think I'll ever actually drink so much beer as to ever actually develop one of those. If I have a gut, it's a Putin gut. Anyway, moving on. So we're here tonight to discuss another one of Mortal Kombat's great faces.
We're strictly A-list tonight.
Oh yes, we are A-list all the way. There are no stunt doubles here.
No, we are, in case you couldn't tell from those fairly obvious jokes, talking about the one, the only,
Johnny Cage! He was 29 when he was first introduced, the blue-eyed actor from Venice, California. I'm just gonna go and listen to the album now, because I think I don't know if we've gotten this across yet, but that album is one of the best things to happen in the history of MK.
We're very big fans.
We listen to it unironically, so you keep your songs inspired by the Warriors, and us old men will walk around with our Zimmer frames to our 90s techno. Thank you very much. So, who is the best character in Mortal Kombat, and why is it Johnny Cage? We're going to cover that tonight. See, I came into this with no game plan except that line. Prove me wrong.
I like it. I like where your head's at.
Absolutely prove me wrong, because I can't actually say, despite my own preferences, that there's a better MK character than Johnny Cage in 2018. I really can't.
Not in 2018, no. He's definitely kind of... The cream has risen to the top.
And it's kind of wonderful. You know, I hope Daniel Benson is really, really proud out there. Because if they've done any character proud, any character justice, it's his.
He's come a long way, because around, like, MK4 and Deadly Alliance, he was really, like, superfluous and just kind of hanging on. And now the character's actually important again, and it's kind of glorious.
There was a long period there where people were talking about him like he was a joke character. I remember seeing a lot of posts like, "What do we need characters like Johnny Cage and Meat for?" Motherfucker, are you serious? There's that difference between a joke character and a jokey character. And Johnny, despite all his quirks, was never a joke character to me. He's just fucking hilarious, that's all.
You know, Johnny was always... I wouldn't say... So there's a thing in fiction where you have to have like an audience self-insert character, like
Hmm.
a guy who's sort of the most normal and from the real world, who all the exposition is delivered to, so that as he learns the plot, the audience learns the plot without it feeling awkward.
The
Johnny's
entry
always
point.
been that character,
Yes.
which is, in some franchises, that's usually the main character. Not so much at MK because you had Liu Kang and he had a more personal stake in the tournament and all that sort of stuff.
And then
But
Sub-Zero kind of took that over for quite some time,
yeah, but
intentionally.
Johnny in at least the trilogy era, when it was, you know, Lou, Raiden, Johnny, and Sonya were like the pillar that like the good guy team sort of grew around. Johnny was always like number 2 to Liu Kang. It was always Lou, then Johnny, then everybody else. And now it's Johnny and then everybody else because Liu Kang has died and become a villain.
And because Sonya has problems of her own.
Well,
Well,
Sonya was never really a contender.
She's kind of there and kind of not.
She's always there. She's just not that important.
We'll cover that when we get to Sonya's, which I
Yeah.
actually really look forward to doing because holy crap, do I ever feel bad for fans of that character.
Yeah.
When you want to
But Johnny Cage.
Johnny Cage. Let's nip this item in the bud really quickly. It's kind of a long-running assumption that he is in this tournament to prove that he's the real deal. And that's not really a game thing. That's an MK movie thing, for more or less.
The game didn't really get why he was coming to the tournament.
Yeah, it was just like, scrolling over it now, and his biography is just, he's been trained by many great masters, and he's a box office champ, and now here he is, and in his ending, he learns how important his fighting skills really are, and realizes the full potential of the tournament, and goes back to Hollywood and films a movie.
Mm-hmm. And then in the sequels, he just keeps coming to, you know, help save the world with his friends.
That's pretty much it. So,
but yeah, like they didn't say the thing about him trying to like people thinking his moves are fake and him trying to prove that he's real by going competitive again until the movie. But I'd like to think that's one of those things that was probably in Tobias's head and he just didn't have the space to write it down.
That would have worked for me. For quite some time there, I actually kind of interspliced the two myself. I was convinced that was actually part of his MK1 bio-retroactive thing. I don't know how the hell that happened. I mean, maybe it's the glory of Lyndon Ashby, you know? Who knows?
Yeah. I mean, the character's got to have a motivation, right? And there is no other one they've ever offered, so...
That's probably it. I probably just gave it to him in my mind, because he really didn't have much of anything for a very, very long time.
I mean, it works. And it's definitely canon to the MK9 version, so...
Yeah.
It is what it is now.
No objections, just, you know, kind of a long-running, quasi-urban myth.
The early MK games are very much, the lore evolved as it went on in retroactive ways.
Yeah.
They sort of built up piece by piece like building a castle out of Legos. You know, the games provided all the red Legos, and then the movie brought some of the blue and yellow ones in. And
There's no denying that, like, the movie was one of the best things that actually happened for the character.
oh yeah, Johnny also, like, he didn't just get his motivation from the film; he got his personality from the film.
Ah, totally. The whole way. The smarm, in particular.
Yeah.
We started seeing that around MK4 just a little bit. It was already in effect by 1997.
Yeah, he's well, it's really a testament to Lyndon Ashby to take a character
Yes.
who's like the central part of his personality is that he's just kind of a cocky asshole and he's like super self-centered and everything, but it takes like a really good actor to play that and actually make it likable.
Which he really did, you know? You go ahead. Find out what that was. You and I will wait right here. while we're talking about Johnny Cage in the film, I'll just bring up this little anecdote from the novelization, and I think the script too, that didn't actually make it to the movie. He's asking for directions on the beach once they get to the island.
Oh, yeah.
And he just like taps the monk on the shoulder. It's like, hey, do you know the way to? And the monk turns around, like his mouth and his eyes are stitched shut. And he had one of those like, gah reactions. And shame that didn't make it in, but
yeah, I would have
editorial
liked that
reasons.
moment too. There's like the scripted novelization kind of flesh out the shadow priests and
Yes.
the hooded guards more. Like I've mentioned before on one of the podcasts that all those hooded guards are actually supposed to be Tarkatans, and that's why they're wearing hoods.
She
The
never get to
script,
see that in the game.
the script calls them Barakas because the word Tarkatan hadn't been invented yet.
From the earliest days, Baraka was kind of meant to be generic, and everyone knew it. So they got enough of them in the freaking Journey Begins.
Yeah, but like there were a lot of little details. Like the novelization specifically points out that like in the Liu and Sub-Zero fight, hey, Shang's not there watching, so who knows that this tournament fight is actually taking place right now? Well, there's a monk there, and he has a scroll, and he keeps record.
Mm-hmm.
So like the Shadow Priests were actually kind of part of the plot.
Be nice for them to have some relevance again. But Johnny Cage.
Yeah, Johnny Cage. So
Johnny Cage.
what I always found interesting, if you look at like MK2, it establishes that when Johnny came home, he made Mortal Kombat the movie.
Right.
But he like rewrote it so that he wins instead of Liu.
Well, he's not gonna do a movie where he's the
Obviously.
secondary help. You know?
And then he goes to the second tournament specifically to get ideas for the sequel script. Like that's his motivation more than saving the world is.
And you can see in his ending that he's actually fighting Shao Kahn up on that there big screen.
Yeah. But like I just think it's fascinating that in the old timeline there are actually like Mortal Kombat, the film based on a true story.
It gets to be a running gag by the time of Deadly Alliance, where we're like, he's actually bored of these things.
Yeah, like they want to film the one about the MK3 movie, and he's like, I don't want to make a movie where I die. That never happened. I don't know what you're talking about.
So, I guess if we're gonna like be complete about this, did it bug you like it did me initially when his shadow kick turned green? Did it? Because I was a fan of like the black shadows initially from MK1.
I liked it better because I kind of like it when a character, when all their stuff is like the same color or it all fits a theme.
More aesthetically pleasing. No, I understand that.
Yeah.
I don't know, I just...
Like,
and calling
like
it the shadow kick was...
I can see the appeal of the original one because it's called the shadow kick, and if they're dark blue, they look more like shadows.
After Image Kick doesn't have quite the same ring, so I let it slide.
Yeah. Also, it's a play on like I think the phrase "no shadow kick" is a real like kung fu movie move. I think what a no shadow kick is when you kick so fast, like it's like a fancy name.
The thought behind it is that you kick so fast, the sun does not have time to cast a shadow. So MK1, head uppercut or shadow kick into chest on SNES. Much better.
Well, I prefer the head uppercut just because
it's iconic
of the way it was animated. The SNES one was not so flashy.
The SNES one was definitely them using assets as best as they could.
Yeah. Here's the thing: they could have done more with it because when he does it, it makes the shadow kick sound effect. But he's at close range and there's no shadows.
And his foot does not actually come out the other side.
Yeah, if there had been an actual shadow kick to it, that could have been cool.
I always used to think that it should have been done at like mid-distance and he actually should have gone forward and then it would have worked a little bit better.
Yeah.
But I imagine that was down to them not being able to fuck with the fatality code too much and possibly not being able to change the distance at which it was performed, because Sub-Zero has the same thing going on, You do the
That's
fatality, and he has to jump back, freeze you. Then he jumps forward to the initial range of his head rip, and he bashes you in the head, and you shatter. So that's probably what the deal
true.
is.
I had never thought about that before, but they are still all done at the same distance as the
Mhm.
originals. Yeah.
They are.
Hmm.
I
Right.
liked the shadow, well, the kick into the chest. It was, in theory, more gruesome, but,
Yeah,
SNES was what
it's
it
like
was, and
of the SNES finishers, it's one of the ones that doesn't suck,
yeah.
but it could have been a lot better.
Kind of a shame that they never brought it back to really do anything, but, well, arguable. When we get to Trilogy, there's one where it's kind of like that, but not
Yeah,
exactly.
his trilogy finishers are weird.
They did the best they could with assets, and it's not
I
always
guess
great, but some good ideas there.
it is hard to do the torso rip with MK3 sprites with the fucking hands attached to the hips when you cut a guy in half.
I forget what the fuck he had in Trilogy. He had the
He puts them up on their shoulders in a fireman's carry and does a backbreaker that
and they
explodes them.
explode, yes.
Yeah, he has the head
And
uppercut.
yes, he's got that. He might have one that's console exclusive. I'm trying to remember. Because he's got one where he kind of shadow kicks your middle out, but that might have been
Yeah,
N64 only. It's been a long
maybe.
time.
I do remember it. I don't remember which console.
If we're going to continue talking about fatalities, we're probably remiss if we don't mention the best fatality glitch ever from MK2.
Yeah. Yep.
Did you ever do that thing that I did where you jump behind the guy and then you do the fatality so that it's more aesthetically satisfying to have their head fly all the way across the arena? All three of their heads? Because I did.
I never actually did that. I didn't know that it made them fly further like that.
It does. For some strange reason, if you do it in front of them, the head will just sort of pop up and land around their feet or just behind them. But if you jump over them and do it from the back, their head will just fly the fuck away. It's weird. They land farther. It's this odd thing. So yeah, looks better to me.
That does sound satisfying. I don't know if I've ever actually pulled off the multiple head pop in
And two?
not in the arcades anyway, maybe in like as an adult playing one of the emulated versions on console, like they put out MK2 attached to Shaolin Monks or the arcade collection re-release.
It's
Might have
it's
might have
down
done it all.
and block and low kick and low punch if I'm remembering right. I think that's it.
Yeah.
Might be
Like I knew that
don't
it
know.
existed, all the strategy guides and stuff threw it in there, so
I really wonder what the purpose of that was, because it doesn't sound like a useful programmer like bug code. What would you use that for?
What I would suspect is that there was a point in time where that was an actual glitch as they were developing. And somebody on the team probably went, "No, don't fix it, leave it in, it's funny."
Okay, maybe.
No, knowing the way the team worked in those days, that's what I think probably happened.
Alternate explanation that wouldn't be quite as fun would be they plan to have him maybe do multiple uppercuts that knocked pieces of the opponent off. Maybe it was like arms and then head and then torso. Who knows? And they decided it didn't work quite well, and so it might be leftover code. I don't know. It's not as much fun to dissect everything. Kind of some mysteries.
Yeah.
So you've talked about how he was in MK1 to MK2. I should say that MK3 for me is kind of really marked, not so much by the absence of Scorpion, because you look back on it now, and the weirdest thing to anyone is that they had a game without Scorpion in it. My God. And to me, at the time, I was like, huh, okay. But we've got this yellow robot that throws nets, so who fucking cares? Where the hell are Johnny Cage and Raiden? That was the weird thing to me at the time. And the fact that the game made such an important plot point of Cage being dead, there being a gravestone with his name on it. And up on Kombat's site, there's this voice sample from like an MS-DOS version of MK3 or like a preview of it. And it's like a funeral, and you hear someone saying "Rest in peace, Johnny Cage," killed by Kintaro or something.
Yeah,
And
it sounds like Ed Boon with a filter on his voice to make it deeper, and he's giving the eulogy for Johnny at a funeral, and he says Kintaro killed him at the second tournament.
yeah, clearly things didn't quite work out like that. But I think you also hear Sonya weeping, or I assume it's
Yeah,
Sonya.
it's definitely a female voice.
Yes.
But yeah, like it ends with an advertisement for MK3. So I'm inclined to believe that it was definitely Ed, and it was like they were doing like a for fun commercial thing, and just, hey, why don't we have it be Johnny Cage's funeral?
At what point they
But-
decided that they weren't going to actually bring him in? It probably had
Well-
something to do with like the bone storm or bloodstorm problems. That they had
Yeah,
with Daniel.
yeah, that's exactly, like, from what I've heard, that's exactly why Johnny wasn't brought back at first, is because Dan Pesina did an advertisement for another game dressed as Johnny,
Yeah, sorry.
and Midway
Dan,
wasn't happy about that.
It was just
and-
not a good move to make.
He was he also one of the he was one of the blue screen actors who wanted royalties from the home versions,
Mm-hmm.
and that became a contract dispute, so all of those characters were either recast or didn't come back.
Yeah.
Like
I don't think they ever actually cleared
Philip
up that
on-
bad blood.
Philip On, who played Shang in 2, Catalin Zamiar, who played Katana. Was Ho-Sung Pak one of them? Is that why?
I'm pretty sure.
No, Liu
No,
Kang
wait,
is,
no. It must have been. That was Eddie Wong. It was Eddie Wong.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was Eddie Wong for part 3.
It might, no, you know what?
I think
Ho-Sung
Anthony-
Pak might not have been one of the ones involved in that. He might have just left because he got that job on that show WMAC Masters.
Ouch.
I mean, that was a
think
good acting gig for him. He was basically the main character of that show.
Fair enough. And I think he did some stunt work for one of the Ninja Turtles movies.
Yeah,
I think
he was Stunt Raphael, I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure.
I remember as a kid looking at that credits list and going, "Hey, I know that guy's name." My dad's like, "Why do you know this random Asian dude in the credits? Mortal Kombat." Ah. So, MK3, well, trilogy really, I guess at this point.
Yeah.
Did you find it as fucked as I did that he couldn't technically die? That after all the hype about him not surviving and being the one guy that finally took one for the team, the first guy to actually really technically die in MK, following MK1 sub, I guess, just gets
Yeah.
booted right back into his own body. And at the end of this, at the end of MK3, the realms go back to the normal state, and Johnny Cage bids farewell to his comrades as his soul leaves to a higher place. And then MK4 fucking starts up, and he asks Raiden to send him back again. So, there's just this gigantic pinball or pong game with Johnny Cage's soul going up and down and back up again. And then back down again for good. I kind of don't blame him for not wanting a movie about this being made.
So from our perspective, from the outside looking in, it does feel like the same guy died and came back like 2 or 3 times in a row, and that it's dumb writing.
I don't
But-
mind it so much. It's unique.
Yeah, if you take the events that happen one at a time. So I actually really like Johnny's trilogy story.
So do I.
I think that there is potential in that whole Johnny knowing that he's technically dead and that he'll die for real when the merger's over.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It was
So that it's actually in his best interests not to help, but he does
it anyways,
because
'cause
he's a good guy.
it's a window into his soul. He's a great person, and I remember at
Yeah.
the time going, "This is really messed up, but it's pretty selfless."
And then you get to the end and he has to like say goodbye to Sonya and everybody else. I think that could have been, if there were cutscenes of this, one of the most emotional and dramatic and well done moments in the entire trilogy, like, I mean, MK1, 2, and 3. Like, that could be like a real tearjerker moment.
No question about it. Like, if were the 3 games actually a fully fledged movie, asshole sidekick gets character development and motivation, and he wasn't really such a bad guy after all. Then someone says something stupid, or he farts, and then he goes off into the distance, and yeah, would have been great.
Yeah, yeah. So, like, the fact that they went the opposite way with it in MK9, kind of dissatisfying for me. Where they went, no wait, we'll save Johnny, and accidentally killed everybody else.
So, there goes Motaro's one great claim to fame. Couldn't quite do it. Not this time.
He bought a car right through a bridge. But yeah, like, I don't know. So MK4 is the part that makes it silly, I think.
It is, because he didn't need to be there.
Well, here's the thing about the original MK4, is that it's a war between heaven and hell.
I guess he
so if ever you're gonna put the dead guys on the roster, you know, that's the time to do it.
Amount of
what I feel like is it would have maybe come off better written if Johnny didn't come back from the dead for real until his ending in that game, instead of that joke ending they do where he's at the Oscars and he gets pelted with tomatoes for saying something dumb.
And wine bottles. Don't forget the wine bottles. Someone out there was shooting to kill again.
But yeah, like, if it had been like, well, he's only there because the fight is taking place in heaven, and he's dead? But then, like, the Elder Gods go, well, you fought bravely, so as a reward, we'll let you come back if you want. That would have been a good ending.
That's fair. That wasn't an ideal plotline, but I suppose it was serviceable.
Yeah. I just think MK4 is such a giant missed opportunity, because if you just say the phrase, heaven versus hell, you will imagine something much more extravagant than what we got. I mean, you think about the idea of heaven versus hell, and it's like, even if it was just Earth versus hell, which is what MKX does it as, it's still like, you think of the biblical apocalypse, you know? It should look like the Book of Revelations or the Rapture. It should look like, you know, the sky is falling and it's the end of the world. And neither MK4 nor MKX really ever sells that.
MKX, to its credit, tries a little bit, and
it's
not always there, but it does a lot of that over MK4, which is kind of a prisoner of its time and the limited 3D graphics and what they were going for. The biggest problem with MK4 is that it feels really empty in terms of design.
Yeah.
There's just not a lot going on anywhere. You also feel very isolated.
It was very handicapped by the fact that they were doing the new 3D engine and still trying to get a handle on it, and they brought back a lot of classic stages for no real reason, like Goro's Lair and Living Forest really have nothing to do with the plot at all.
But hey, Living Forest got a great remix.
Yeah, it was nice to see it, and the music was good, but like previous MKs, the backgrounds were part of telling the story, because, like, you know, MK1, you're being introduced to all these parts of Shang's Island. MK2, you're seeing Outworld for the first time. MK3, you're seeing how fucked New York City is. In MK4, none of the stages really have anything to do with anything. Cool-looking places to fight in, and that's really all the creativity they had.
There's a
I think there was a lot of burnout going on at the time.
It's possible. They had been working on games for the better part of, well, more than half a decade at this point, and I think they tried there. The whole Rainy Arena was, I gathered, Fujin's area from MK Mythologies.
Well, yeah, there were several areas that were from Mythologies.
Yeah,
and
the Elder
those
Gods
were
area, the Gods area with all the big O-mouthed faces sitting around.
Yeah.
And Shinnok's place was obviously where he hung his hat, because you had, like, severed heads lining the walls. So there was an effort there, but they never really sold it with every single background. There's that one stage where there's just a bunch of coffins sitting around,
Yeah.
and I don't know for the life of me where the fuck that's supposed to be.
So I have a theory because it's purple out the window, and the MK Gold version added a coffin that looked like Shao Kahn.
Ah,
I
okay.
think it's supposed to be his tomb in Outworld.
Was there actually a difference? Okay. I'll have to go and look that up. Cool. It was called The Tomb, wasn't it?
Yes, it was just called The Tomb. For some reason, I always associated it with Reiko because it's purple and he wears purple, I guess.
And he was supposed to have been dead for a long time, so
Yeah,
no
like,
better place to come back from?
I guess. But I just feel like I want to see stages where, like, there's meteors falling from the sky and ruined buildings and monsters roaming around in the background, and not just winged demons. Like MKX had a lot of those. I want to see, like, eyeballs with bat wings and tentacles coming out of the clouds. I want to see every possible horror you can imagine. If it's fucking hell is invading Earth, it needs to look like the end of the world.
The kind of hell that you and I envisioned actually taking place during these invasions when we were young. I don't know. I don't think that they think on the scale that we, the fans, do for those kinds of things, unfortunately.
Well, that's why it feels like a missed opportunity to me. And I think if it had felt more apocalyptic, like, really, you don't know that heaven has anything to do with it unless you read the bios.
Yeah.
Like, none of the stages really look like you'd imagine heaven. Like, even the one with the Elder God faces on the walls just kind of feels like it's like a tiny cramped room that Raiden goes to talk to them. It's
Pretty
not
much.
like, it's not really heaven.
They're not going
to
to let
me.
you or anyone else up there if they can, but in terms of storyline fairness, they probably shouldn't. You've got, what else there? There's Goro's lair, because he's kicking around for the story, I guess, to fight Liu Kang, and there's like a Frosty arena, which I guess is Lin Kuei associated.
Yeah, I there are no, like, logos on it, but you have to assume, I suppose.
We got to see where Reptile lived. There was Shaolin Temple.
Yeah, Reptile's lair was okay, I guess.
And there was the Netherrealm prison. Just kind of a bunch of places, really.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, just a bunch of cool rooms to fight in.
Maybe a third of them actually considerable as plot relevant. Kind of a shame.
You tell me it's a war between heaven and hell, and I kind of want to see a war between heaven and hell. That's all I'm saying.
Back to Johnny.
Johnny gets to come back from the dead, and he goes right back to making movies. He regresses personality-wise. I think it's like a midlife crisis sort of situation, except more pronounced because holy shit, he was dead. It's like, I didn't die. That never happened. I'm the best. Just the complete denial, and he dyes his hair blonde and gets a lion tattooed on his back.
A Deadly Alliance now?
I think so. I will say about MK4 a couple things. So even though it was the first 3D game, they managed to get his shadows right. No other game in the 3D era did that.
Yeah, they were all fugly.
Yeah, he had actual after images in MK4, and then it was just mist in the 3D era.
Just
terrible. But I really like what MK4 brought to his fatalities. The fact that he charges his fist up green before the head pop, and the fact that he does that twist in the torso rip.
The uncomfortable crackling was a great touch.
Yeah. It really made both of them a lot more, like, visceral and powerful feeling. I think those are the best versions of those finishing moves.
I do want to say, out of all the weapons that they could have given him, I didn't quite get the Bowie knife. The giant, oversized Bowie knife.
Yeah, I don't know. I think they were just...
There was not a terribly great amount of forethought, I thought, for most of the weapons that those characters got in that game.
No.
It just feels like Raiden went, here's the armory, this is what I've got, take whatever stick suits you, let's go, we don't have a lot of time.
Yeah, Sonya had a pinwheel.
What the fuck? Okay, we'll get there.
Yeah, but I just never felt, even in the 3D era where they made weapons more of a thing, I never once felt that every character makes sense having a weapon, so there's really no idea you can have that fits. Like, Johnny with nunchucks is a little better than Johnny with a Bowie knife, but still, nah, man.
He's just not like a weapon user. I can't
No.
see it.
Like, the brass knucks in X are cool.
There is that, but like it's an extension of his fighting capability.
Yeah.
He's just not the type to use a blade weapon.
Brass knuckles aren't really a weapon, they're a buff.
Yeah, there you go. And Jax had a fucking mace, Sonya had a pinwheel, Fujin had a crossbow, which at the time, yeah, sure, fine, but now, I wouldn't give it back to him.
I still like Fujin with the crossbow.
I don't know.
It shoots, like, godly energy. It's a magic crossbow. And I think a projectile weapon fits the God of Wind. I think it's dumb and boring to see him with some kind of stick.
I'm not saying he necessarily needs a stick, but does he really need a crossbow to shoot arrows? But that's for the Fujin retrospective. Gotta stay on top of it. Johnny Cage.
Sure. Johnny Cage.
Johnny Cage.
Johnny Cage!
Johnny Cage!
So, Deadly Alliance.
Well, before we get to Deadly Alliance, coming into Deadly Alliance, I should say, we haven't talked much about his visual aesthetics and design.
That's true.
Doesn't change too much.
No, it's pretty consistent, at least from MK2 to MK4.
I think that they did right in taking away the shorts for MK2. He looked much better in MK2.
What always stuck in my mind was, because color schemes are so important to MK characters, it was a little weird that he started out with a red belt and then blue became his thing. And blue has since then been his thing. Like, he looks good in blue. I wonder... I guess it was red because it looked like... So Johnny in MK1 was designed to look like he's wearing the same thing that Jean-Claude Van Damme wears in Bloodsport.
Right.
And he got his own look in MK2 on. Because, like, he's an obvious parody, but even his story is a parody. Because the story of Bloodsport is based on a true story, quote unquote, about this dude named Frank Dukes, who, like, went AWOL from the army and claimed that it was to participate in a deathmatch kung fu tournament for the guy who trained him in Asian martial arts. And he always claimed that the martial art he'd been taught was the last remaining real style of Japanese ninjutsu. And the entire martial arts community since the 80s has been like, that guy is a fraud. He is full of shit. So there's something very funny about the Frank Dukes parody, Johnny Cage. His entire backstory is about proving that he's not a fraud by going to a deathmatch tournament.
I think they knew what they were doing. This is too great to be coincidence.
Yeah. I enjoy that.
No, it's good.
Yeah. But yeah, he got his own clothes from MK2 on, and it's always been sweatpants and blue.
They added some stripes to him in MK4, and they kind of came and went, and...
So there's sort of an origin story to the stripes, in that the sweatpants, or the, I don't know, windbreaker pants he wore in MK2 had a brand name down the leg in white letters.
Yeah, and they had to actually remove that.
They edited the brand name off because they couldn't, like, actually get sponsorship from that brand, so they didn't want to give them free advertising.
That's a little detail that I forgot. It's been almost lost to
Right.
the time. Thank you for bringing
But-
this up.
But there's one sprite in the game that they forgot to edit, and it's when he gets his soul stolen by Shang's fatality.
Son of a
The
bitch, I gotta go
brand
look this
name-
up.
Yeah, the brand name Otomix appears on his leg in that sprite.
Man, is this the place for trivia or what?
Yeah.
So, I guess for MK4 they ran with that, and now
Yeah,
that
the white
retroactively
stripes are like
says...
a vague reference to that white lettering
Yeah.
he used to have.
doesn't actually say anything in MK4, it just kind of looks like it does. Just a bunch of stripes.
Yeah,
It's the
no, they're
picture I'm
just
looking
like
at.
dash marks down his leg. But there are subtle differences in each game. Like, so in MK2, it's sweatpants, white sneakers, blue belt, and then he's got like fuzzy wristbands, like athletic wristbands, sweatbands on his wrists.
Yes.
And he doesn't wear the sunglasses until his win pose. Chris Anderson? Is that the guy who did him in Trilogy? Chris something.
Checking the MK whorehouse. Give me a sec.
So while you're checking
Gonna
that,
edit that the fuck out. Yes, go on.
so the Trilogy version of Johnny is wearing his sunglasses at all times.
Which I actually really, really enjoyed.
Mm-hmm.
I
And
think he does look better with them on.
Right. He gained black gloves and shin guards to go with his wrists, not just on his shins. And then I think the MK4 version keeps the shin guards on his arms, loses the gloves. But everything else is pretty much the same as Trilogy, and plus the white dashes on his pants.
I liked the gloves for that one appearance in Trilogy, and I'm actually glad that they removed those. The gloves are a bit much. It's just... I don't describe a lot of things as very 90s, but somehow Trilogy Johnny Cage's gloves...
Yeah,
just a tad.
Wearing gloves when you're not wearing a shirt is weird to me for some reason.
He kind of looks like he's about to get into like a 2 Unlimited music video.
Yeah.
Just a tad. He's got a bit of background dancer going on, but it's just because of the gloves.
Yeah.
Motherfucker turned into a kangaroo for his animality, remember that?
Yeah, he did.
Because kicks.
That's fine, whatever.
There were dumber ones out there.
There were. There
But,
really were. I mean, I can't be mad at them when realistically they had run out of animals before they got to Trilogy and were just scraping the bottom of the barrel.
It's a logical choice to make. Because kicks.
Yeah, it's fine. It's fine. I mean, you think about it, maybe Kano should have been the kangaroo because Australia.
He wasn't at the time, though. At the time he was still considered to be, I don't know, potentially Japanese-born American deported from everywhere, or American-born Japanese. I don't.
It's MK3 was made while the movie was in development, so they could have gotten ahead of it if they wanted to.
They didn't have any way of knowing just how powerful a legacy Trevor Goddard would have on the character.
That's true. It's fine. If I was doing animalities now, I would give Kano like a koala, or it'd be a drop bear.
Yes, I was about to say.
Kano's animality would be a drop bear.
He just jumps off the back of the screen, and there's silence for about 2 or 3 seconds, and then blah, onto your throat from above. Horrible rending noises. Sounds that should be coming from no mortal throat. And yeah, then he turns toward the camera as he chews on something. Slowly.
I mean, a spider is fine because Australia does have giant spiders too, but I would give the spider to Shiva so that Scorpion can be the Scorpion.
And because multiple arms. Sure,
Yes.
fine, why not?
Yes.
But yes, Scorpion the Penguin does bother me too. Like no other. Just totally fucking out of ideas. Ugh.
Johnny Cage.
Johnny Cage. So yes, Deadly Alliance comes along, and I brought up his visual design going into that because I have never liked the 3D Johnny Cage design.
They went back to the bicycle shorts, yeah.
That alone wouldn't be
So
bad, but it
there,
was the
yeah, there's some,
decision to give him like the shin and the foot wraps. I didn't dig
so
it.
I on some of these elements I saw where they were trying to do like it's sort of an MMA thing to have the wrapped feet, and I kind of get why that's there, but his belt buckle is a door knocker. Like
And why is this? Why is it like this? I didn't think this was cool when it was happening, but I didn't say much about it.
is it
I
supposed to
just
be funny on purpose? I feel like that's what they're going for.
I chose the
Where
tuxedo.
So like Deadly Alliance is the first game where everybody's outfits get really fancy, like they bling them out as much as possible to try and match Soul Calibur. I wonder if there's a logic where they're going, Johnny would look at that and go, I can do that too. And his answer would be a door knocker.
It is some sort of fucking weird ass MMA belt or something. You have to see him from the back,
It's
but it's so fucking
well,
hideous.
there's like a plate of armor under the belt that like a lot of characters in the 3D era had. It's very like Asian kung fu movie look, which is fine.
And he's got one hand wrapped and the other's
Yeah,
in this blue
it's
silk
it's a
ribbon.
ribbon. He just one hand is wrapped in athletic tape, and the other's just wrapped in a blue ribbon.
And he's got like Astaroth's bicep guards or some shit going on around. There's not a part of this I actually like looking at it.
It's I don't hate it.
I think I do, man. I think I really do. It's awful.
It's a little over the top, but again, I see a comedy in it.
Well, there's comedy in the
I-
ending photos where he's like wearing it and a director's cap and like walking around the studio yelling at
Yeah.
people through a megaphone. Oh my god.
There's like a Moloch puppet in front of a blue screen back there.
Shanksing off to one side, arms folded, waiting for directions. Uh, but yeah, this was where they started, I think, also kind of going out of their way a little bit to make him a little bit hokier, a little bit funnier.
Yeah.
His ending here, we've actually got concrete evidence of them being embarrassed that they killed and brought him back a few times. And I remember there
I
was
always liked. So I simultaneously like and dislike the meta nature of that bio because I do think it's genuinely funny to have Johnny be in denial about the times he's died and like regressing as a person because he's going through his midlife crisis. But it always bugged me on the message boards back in the day when the game came out that people didn't get the joke and thought Vogel was actually retconning MK3
yeah, that
and
was
4.
never the case. People were like, oh, well, this is just them insinuating that he didn't like the notion of him dying and coming back. That doesn't make
No,
any sense because then
it's
he's
obviously
just...
a joke.
Yeah.
Like they wrote it with exclamation points. It says he kicked butt! Exclamation point. He didn't die. He kicked butt. That's obviously funny. That's comedy relief. Those events happened, and Johnny doesn't want to talk about them.
This is also the game where we also got to look at Johnny Cage's filmography.
That's true, and
This is the birth of Ninja Mime.
it's a quite large filmography. Like we got a lot of titles. My favorite is Gist of My Fist.
Oh, Christ God Almighty! There was that. There was
24 Karate Gold.
Yep. Who's that? One of them is just straight up called Hua.
Yeah. And then it turns out that Johnny Cage is the David Carradine of the MK universe. He was in a show called Wushu,
Yep.
which is literally kung fu, but that version.
And Cyrex hates his movies.
Cyrex wants his money back for Ninja Mime.
Cyrex is gonna beat those $5 out of Johnny Cage's skull.
I
Do you think he saw like the movie while he was part of the Lin Kuei, or was he on vacation or like on assignment, or what was the deal?
I I would have to imagine he was a ninja at the time, and that's why he's so offended.
A part of me wants to believe that like this happened during the special forces period of his life, where like he was just undergoing treatments, and he has like this Raphael trench coat in, still half cybernized underneath the whole thing. Walks into a theater, helmet still on, getting angrier and angrier. I mean, not too much you can say about him here in Deadly Alliance story-wise, other than, he shows up and he lands on the island via parachute.
Yeah, he has to make a grand entrance for like 6 people, and one of them is Raiden. Like, who are you impressing right now?
You know he's really doing it for Sonya. And this is also, actually, this is also worth mentioning that in his ending, he's got that Cage's back poster, and you've got Sonya with her arms wrapped around his leg.
Yeah, so that was pretty much the first time a canon game actually referenced, like, the movie romance between the two of them. There's vague hints of it in the MK4 comic book, but that's not necessarily canon because it wasn't written by Tobias like the books were.
I accept it as kind of sort of there.
So there's a weird thing about that comic, in that the only part of it that contradicts the canon is Johnny Cage's role in it. Because it doesn't mention him coming back from the dead at all. He's just happens to be hanging out with the Special Forces when he arrives on the scene in the plot, and it's like, what are you doing here? And he's like, well, I'm doing research because I'm playing a Special Forces agent in my next movie. And it's like,
believable.
But you're dead, though.
Yeah. Maybe they didn't think that was actually going to be a thing that happened. But
I don't know.
It doesn't take a genius to figure out that in any given scenario where a guy like Johnny is around, he's sitting on the first thing around him with breasts. So it's... I think it's a thing that we all assumed was going to happen, no matter who was writing the character.
Yeah, and it does really bring, like... Sonya doesn't have a lot without that subplot.
That saddens me to say it, but it's actually kind of true.
I think Sonya needs Johnny Cage.
Oh, God. We have so much material for the Sonya podcast episode now, and it's all bad.
Yeah, we do.
From windmills to needing Johnny Cage in 5 minutes.
That's the Sonya episode is going to be the podcast of sadness. It covers her like a blanket. Tuck her in. Let her die.
I'm so sorry, girl. I love you so much. It's just not right for you to live anymore. It would be crueler to let you continue like this. But no. We'll get to that.
So we should talk about gameplay a little bit. Johnny's moves and finishers in Deadly Alliance, because they did change him a little bit. He still had the Shadow Kick. He still had the Force Ball. They replaced the Nut Punch and the Shadow Uppercut with a move that combined the two. He did a split, and then instead of hitting you in the nuts, he comes up from the split with a green uppercut. This game also is the one that introduced his Flash Kick. Although it was just a normal in that game. He could do it 2 times in a row with weird floaty powers, but he didn't have any shadows on it.
He also had one of the weirder fatalities in this game, the brain rip.
Yeah. I liked the brain rip because it was the first time the brain had ever come into play in a finishing move.
True. This is also at the same time that I believe Sub-Zero took your entire skeleton out through your back.
Yeah, he KO'd you in this one.
In retrospective, it wasn't so bad. Yeah, I remember that now. We're not going to get hokey shit like Kano ripping out your entire skeleton. Oh, there it goes again.
Wah, wah.
Yep, pretty much.
He also, like his fighting styles, he had Shotokan Karate, and, crap, what was the second one? I think it was another style of karate, like Shorin Ryu or whatever.
And the answer to that is it's Jeet Kune Do.
Ah, that's right. He had Jeet Kune. That's why he had, because Liu Kang's not in that game,
Mm-hmm.
so they gave Johnny Jeet Kune Do and nunchucks
And
to
you're...
reference Bruce Lee. So here's another thing we forgot. MK4 and Deadly Alliance
Mm-hmm.
are both the games with that introduced alternate costumes, and Johnny and both had a tuxedo.
Oh, I mentioned the tuxedo. Remember, I hate the MK Deadly Alliance outfit. I choose the
All
tuxedo
right.
all the time.
Yeah,
I could
the
not stand
tux
it.
is the tux is nice. So what's interesting that I forgot though is that in MK4, your alternate costumes could come with alternate weapons.
Ah,
And Johnny's
yes.
tuxedo weapon was a gun.
Because James Bond.
It worked like Fujin's crossbow.
Because James Bond.
But yeah, Johnny has a gun in MK4.
I mean, when compared to a reality wherein you've got, like, cars that are submersibles, literal poison pens, I'm not gonna hold a gun that fires blue, yellow, green
You know,
ovals out of it.
you know,
There's worse.
regardless of the projectile looking magic or not, I honestly think we were talking about how Johnny's one of those characters that a weapon doesn't work for. I'm
Don't tell me
okay
to
with him with a pistol.
I'm okay with it if he's not actually going to be using it against, like, the hordes of Outworld, not in an actual fight. I can't see him as that guy going, like, I know gun fu, and just
I don't
shoots the
know. I
guy
feel
3 feet in front of him like Indiana Jones.
no, I feel like there's room for that in an MK game where he does the Indiana Jones thing.
You know what? Maybe in
Because
an, I'm too old for this kind of moment. In MK11,
yeah,
sure.
because he's
He's like,
he's Johnny Cage, and
whatever.
if anybody knows the tropes, it's gonna be Johnny Cage.
Have him comment on it and we're good. Oh yes, the pants actually do say Cage now in this game. And he's got the
Yes,
fucking
yes, he's
back tattoo.
fucking back tat.
Christ, God almighty. It really is a midlife crisis phase, isn't it?
It absolutely is. I fucking love it. Because if you work out the timeline, he was dead for almost a decade. So, like, he's not even old enough to be having a midlife crisis biologically.
Oh yes, and he had the taunt that gave him back some health. Almost forgot about that.
Yeah. Their taunts were a thing in Deadly Alliance.
And wisely, they gave him one where he's
That
like kind of giving the come hither
the
beckon.
the Neji where they would grow briefly.
Not all
Like
of them had that, thankfully.
that was the graphical representation of the buff. They would swell up.
Just aged poorly the second it happened.
You also had some characters with impaling weapons. Like, you had to give up your style, but the other guy was fucked. He was going to bleed out for the rest of the match.
They did not know how to scale that damage and that health. Oh my god, the level of health drain was awful.
So yesterday, I actually played a little Deadly Alliance.
Okay.
And the reason I did was because I had recently been reminded that that game has height and weight bios
Right.
at the select screen. I was looking up all the heights and weights to compare, like, the MK1 characters and see if they were the same numbers. And a lot of the numbers are the same, but some of them are different.
Mm-hmm.
But the more important point right now is I was poking around in Conquest training mode, and in Deadly Alliance, when you entered your weapon stance, you took more damage.
Yeah. Yes.
Just those weird early attempts to balance their dumb new ideas.
Well, it was, this is coming way after MK4, and if you get punched in the face while holding your weapon, you fall to the ground, drop it, and cry like a baby. Remember that?
Yeah,
It was
what I
terrible.
remember is that pulling out your weapon is the dumbest thing you can do in MK4 if you're fighting the AI, because
The second you do it, it's...
lose their
Blah.
shit,
Yeah.
and they will, like, become obsessed with knocking that fucking thing out of your hand.
Their aggressive meter just goes up to 11 the second you take the weapon out. Works in such strange ways.
It's amazing that they would, program a new thing, a cool thing that everybody wants to try out, and then make the AI do everything it can to prevent you from using the new cool thing.
The only time you could ever pull that weapon was in the middle of a combo. Just try it on your own, and before that weapon is even out of your waist pocket, you're going down.
It's a shame, man.
So, Johnny Cage, Deadly Alliance, gets killed. Again.
He does.
Gets rest.
Him and 4 other
immediately.
people.
And, that's the story of Johnny Cage and Deception. Not much of anyone to go off of.
And this is why I said, if you had asked me 15 years ago how important Johnny Cage is to Mortal Kombat, I would have gone, fuck him. It's time to retire that character. But you ask me now, and I'm like, Johnny is the best. Fuck you. Don't touch him.
Starting with Armageddon, we're about to enter the age of Cage.
We are. We've got a couple games to go before we get there.
It's going to take some doing, but Armageddon is the first example of them trying to really make something out of him, I think.
It is. It's sort of a belated attempt, like it's done after the game came out by Vogel alone.
Because the stink at the time was, why the hell do we have 87 characters and not a viable reason for a single one of them being around, apart from gotta catch a pyramid?
Yeah. How can you release a game that you're advertising as the conclusion to all of the storylines? You're promising it'll wrap up all the plots and lore and end the series, and you put it out without any character bios.
I've been saying lately that I'm much more lenient on what Armageddon could and couldn't give us at the time, but I feel like this was still a massive oversight, all things considered.
Yeah, no, bios are not like resource intensive. You get one guy his job is already writing. You have a person you have at least 3 people on the staff at that time. I think 4, whose job is writing. Like they're not programmers, they're not modelers, they're not busy with other stuff. They just write. And you can't sit them down and have them make the 64 bios while the rest of the game is being made.
I kind of got the sense that they wanted us to kind of put the pieces together as best we could as terms of who was there and who was doing what in Conquest mode and the last time we'd seen most of the cast. But it's not something that you can do with 60 characters.
No,
there's too many questions.
So much of the cast is not in Conquest mode, and the ones that are, when they show up, you're not sure how they got there from the previous game.
They did not actually cover everyone. To this day, we figure Stu Hao is there when he has red eyes because he is dead and he's a wraith. So we go with that as a running explanation. Much the same for Shiva. Kintaro too, depending who you ask.
Well, yeah, like anybody who's a villain who died in a previous game, the answer is given that Shinnok let everybody out of hell because he wants Armageddon to happen.
Yeah.
But a lot of the good guys, it's not a question of why they're there, it's a question of, like, what did they do between to get there? Like, for example, so Armageddon, the big one I always turn to as an example is that Armageddon is set in Edenia, but Sindel is one of the characters who never got a bio. Kitana, her only mention is in Nightwolf's bio. Jade doesn't have a bio. And those are the most important Edenia characters. I would like to know how they feel about the apocalypse happening on their turf.
And the best you can really do is, they're probably not okay with this, and they hook up with all the good guys, and they decide to go and do something about it till the sun comes up.
It's a downer, man.
Yeah.
But at least we got a few bios after the game came out on the website for the game.
And Johnny's is the king of them all.
Kind of.
It actually gives a lot of context.
It really kind of does. And the weird thing is that it telegraphs a lot of what they do with Johnny and MKX. Because Armageddon is where we first get the idea that Johnny and Shinnok are somehow rivals of each other. That there's a connection between those two characters.
These are the seeds being planted.
And Johnny is kind of the leader of the good guys in Armageddon. Because, much for the same reason as he is in MKX, when Liu Kang is dead and Kung Lao is Kung Lao, which means he always just kind of fails at things, who else is there to step up and do it?
So yeah, in Armageddon you have Johnny Cage, of all people, rallying everyone, getting people together, having these visions, being set up as a polar opposite to Shinnok, and it's comforting, in a way, to actually see them, after all these years, take him a bit more serious. It was nice.
At the time it happened, because of the nature of the bios being on the website after the game was already out, it always felt like too little too late to me. But looking back on it now, knowing what I do about MK9 and X and what they did with Johnny, I see it now. And it's like,
everyone,
okay, I respect you. You were trying to make him cool again, and it worked eventually.
Well, people at the time were just enraged at the perceived lack of effort that was going on there, but even at the time, I was very impressed with how much detail they put into Johnny's in particular. Johnny's alone went a long way as an apology for me. That bit of good it did him, because they all died.
Yeah. That is the ultimate shame of Armageddon. It didn't need to end that way. Like, just because you say it's the end of the world, like, doesn't mean it has to be. That's what a plot is. The good guys prevent the bad thing.
His ending actually kind of also points the way towards what would happen with him in the future. Johnny Cage defeated Blaze, and the power of the gods rushed through him. He gained superior strength and dexterity, but more important, a new insight into his existence. With the help of Shaolin masters, he renounced his superficial former life and became enlightened. Not word for word, well, he's a descendant of an ancient Mediterranean cult. But that line about an insight into his existence kind of makes me wonder.
I always took it as more like
spiritual, as in he realized that there was more to life than being a movie star. Fine.
If you think about it, it's the same character development that's already supposed to have happened to him in MK1 and MK Trilogy.
Supposed to, but
then that midlife crisis hit.
So now we enter MK9's period.
Well, before we do that, I want to give honorable mention to Shaolin Monks for being the game that introduced the phrase, "You got caged."
This is very true. At the time, I was convinced it was just a one-off. It was just a bit of hilarious comedy. It was never going to come back. It's a thing now. I have a t-shirt that says, "You're going to get caged" on it.
I would never have let that phrase die. I promise you. I was going to push it for SummerSlam. And they did it for me, so I don't have to be mad.
Oh my god, it's so wonderful. And yes, one of the best fatalities of all time comes from Johnny in Shaolin Monks.
Oh, that's true.
Where he uses your nuts as a punching bag. And he's got like the left-right rhythm going on. And then finally everything just fucking blows up.
Yeah. That was great. He also, worth mentioning, he does his SNES finisher to Goro in a cutscene.
Oh god, that's right. He kills him.
Yeah.
Stop bringing up Shaolin Monks' story mode. You're just making the children sad. One day, man. One day we'll do a Let's Play of that whole fucking thing, and the people will see that have never seen that story mode before why I hate it so much.
I'm looking forward to that day.
No, you're not.
I actually kind of am.
Ugh.
I mean, say what you will about the story mode, I like playing Shaolin Monks.
The game is fun. But it's like MK Mythologies. I just want a better version of it that has the things that are terrible taken out.
Yeah.
Like Mythologies with its gameplay. And Shaolin Monks with its... Just combine the two somehow. Take the story of one, give it the gameplay of another, and there's a instant classic in there somewhere.
Yeah, no, it's... You should cut out all the cutscenes in Shaolin Monks and replace them literally with Mythology's cutscenes, and it won't make sense, but it'll be the best thing.
Spectacular. Imagine if Fire Ice had actually become a thing.
So, anyway, that does bring us to MK9.
Because he sat MKDC out.
He did. He was in the comic book, like the little one-shot that came with the special edition of the game.
I got that.
Yeah, he's in it for one panel where it basically shows that him, Goro, Aquaman, and Robin are among a group of characters from both universes who just kind of get erased from reality when DarkCon causes the merger. And that's their excuse for any character that's not in the game.
Because reasons.
They just... And it's like part of the plot in-game, too, that like both sides are investigating mysterious disappearances. But that is a shame. I will point out that the costume Johnny's wearing in that comic includes the bicycle shorts from Deadly Alliance.
Oh, we did neglect to bring up a detail that was from Shaolin Monks. Going back a little bit to old MK1 quasi-lore, and that was the way to fight Ermac.
Ah, yeah.
So, the original Ermac rumor, quote-unquote, that popped up in EGM was you had to beat your opponent as Johnny Cage in the Warrior Shrine using nothing but punches. Or something to that effect. Now, the way to fight Ermac in Shaolin Monks was... I believe you had to go to like the specific out-of-the-way place, and I think you had to win a fight using punches. Something like that.
Yeah, there's a path at the Shaolin Temple, which is like the second stage of the game. The first is Shang's Island. So you had to first get the Fist of Ruin, which destroys the big statues.
Yep.
And then you had to get the upgrade that lets you swing on poles in order to reach a high-up platform.
God,
and that would bring you to the Warrior Shrine, which was in that game for some reason at the Shaolin Temple instead of on Shang's Island. And you'd walk up there and you'd examine the statues. And if you examined the ninja statue enough times, it would turn out to be Ermac. And he'd attack you.
And he'd have Stone Johnny Cage minions.
Yeah, he would bring the Johnny statue to life for some reason to fight with him.
I believe it was a direct reference to that EGM rumor. I'm sure of it. Weirdly specific thing to have going on.
Yeah, he doesn't bring any of the other statues to life except Johnny, so...
They've read their history. They knew what they were doing.
Works for me. So yeah, MK9 now?
MK9 now.
Right.
The chest tattoo.
MK9 is the game where every character except Johnny Cage gets shit on in order to vastly improve him.
I will go to my grave defending Smoke in MK9, but we'll get there when we get there.
And I'll go to my grave saying you're wrong, but...
yeah, we're not going to start this shit.
That's fine. That's fine. It's Johnny time.
It's Johnny time. So the chest tattoo.
Right.
Is it perfect or is it not perfect?
It's fucking perfect, man.
It kind of really is. The stupid lion on his back, no, but this, yes.
Oh yeah, I love the chest tattoo from the moment I saw it.
Was this a sober or drunk decision, do you think?
Oh. I think multiple people were involved in various states of inebriation. But those people were doing it right.
Oh my god. The chest tattoo. The belt buckle that says Cage. It's personal branding at its finest.
It's fucking beautiful, man.
The This is how you don't fuck up a character. This is how you give a character
And
legacy.
and I'll tell you what, the guy who plays him in MKX does a fine job, but Jeff Pilson is Johnny Cage.
Oh yes, definitely. There was something special about that performance, wasn't there?
There really was. That was peak Cage. It was perfect.
And the award goes to... I was hoping to actually replay MK9 Story Mode before we got to this podcast episode, but I sadly did not have the time. I felt that was more important than I play MKX, and I did.
Yeah, some of the best writing in dialogue-wise in MK9 is in Johnny's chapter right at the beginning of the game. And I let me say that I criticize MK9's writing a lot.
As you should.
But when I do that, I'm talking mostly about like the plot. The events that happen are very, very stupid. But dialogue is actually very strong in that game.
Yes.
Just like it is in the intros in MKX. And so some of the best lines are Johnny's when he's saying stuff like, whatever role-playing game you guys are into, leave me out, and stuff like that. The fact that they made up even more movie titles for him to just name drop while he's talking to people, like Tommy Scissorfists.
Christ, was that actually one of them?
It
Tommy
was.
Scissorfist? I should have played 9 before. He
mentions that movie when he's looking at Baraka. He's like, oh man, you remind me of Tommy Scissorfist. And apparently he had a big action movie called Time Smashers.
Yes,
which is ironic considering the plot of MK9
Yep.
is about smashing your fucking way through time.
His bio mentions Dragon Fist, Time Smashers, and Citizen Cage. Citizen Cage!
That's one of my favorite things about Johnny, is how many movies he apparently has where he just plays himself. Like, can you think of anywhere in the real world where an actor is just them in a bunch of their films? Like, not playing a role, their character doesn't have a fake name, it's just this movie's about Johnny Cage. In this movie, Johnny Cage plays a cop named Johnny Cage. In this movie, Johnny Cage plays an FBI agent named Johnny Cage. In this movie...
I guess Jackie Chan's the closest thing we've got.
I
He's
guess.
been himself in a couple, hasn't he? Like 2 or 3.
There are several Bruce Lee movies where the character he plays is named Lee.
Terribly imaginative.
Yeah.
You know, people wondered, like, who could be upset at the fact that in MK Legacy, he was portrayed as a failed right-to-be DVD movie superstar, and I was never okay with that. The legacy version of Johnny Cage, is a parody of Jason David Frank for some reason. Yeah, I just...
Like, they keep bringing up Power Rangers.
I don't... They just missed the point entirely for me. I never liked it.
You know what? I can see why you do that if you're making a very low-budget thing. You don't have the resources to show a guy as a big A-list celebrity, but you do have the resources to show him as, like, a struggling failed actor. And it also, I suppose, fit their fucking dark and gritty tone or whatever.
I think it was more about that than anything else, personally.
Yeah.
I was never down with it. It was funny to actually see, like, Ed Boon show up and, like, comment on it, but...
Yeah.
That's all there was to it.
Yeah. It was not satisfying for me either.
So, 9 also gives us the Mediterranean cult background as origin for his powers.
That's true. Which, to be fair, the original origin for his powers was not really what you could call an origin. It was very much just like, well, he trained with these ancient masters, and that's all you get. And it's like, well, what did they train him in? Why? How did he meet these ancient masters? Did his dad know them? What was the connection there? How did that happen before his movie career started?
for me, it was good enough. I really hated the Mediterranean cult background when it first popped up. I'm a firm
I
believer
kind of
that some things should be shown and not told. Not everything. And I never really had the question of where Johnny got his powers all throughout the decades. I
so
just figured he worked really hard at it, and she's a thing you can manipulate in the MK universe, and he specialized in these things himself, which also made the fact that for the movie version of his origin, where he wants to prove that all this shit's legitimate, it hits harder if you have a character who believes that these are all things he created by himself.
well, so to be fair, you still have that because Johnny doesn't know
No,
where the
it's
green
true.
energy comes from until after Shao Kahn's invasion.
No, it's true. And had MKX not gone into detail about it, it would have bothered me a little bit more. But they did. So that went a long way towards making it okay for me. I don't object to it anymore.
Here's what it is for me, is that you still have that feeling that people can just gain chi powers by working hard. In MK2 Jax, in Liu Kang, a few other characters. Sonya's Kiss of Death is obviously not technology. It seems like she trained with Liu.
We'll get to that
So
in the
that's
Sony
still-
episode, because I've never been entirely sure about that. Sonya's
Right,
Kiss probably
well-
deserves a half an hour of discussion.
It's fuzzy, but I always figured Sonya trained with Liu Kang because in MK3 she got a bicycle kick.
I actually think that we owe a lot to Mortal Kombat Annihilation for what the Kiss of Death actually is today. But we'll get there.
Maybe. It's what I think is the canon version of the Kiss of Death in the new timeline, so it doesn't matter. But as far as like the whole working hard to get powers thing goes, that's still a thing that happens in the MK universe.
No, yeah, that's fair. And just with the background, or like the juxtaposed movie background, I felt that was actually a special part of what made Cage, Or, well, for sure he was a jokey character and not someone to always be taken seriously, but you can't deny that he's skilled. So
Right.
when this first happened, it seemed to kind of undercut the whole aspect of there's something special about this guy. Well, now there is, but now it's a matter of
Like,
having a
I-
lineage or privilege, and that
Yeah.
took away from me, but just for a bit.
I can see where you're coming from with that, because I would be very mad if like all the characters turned out to have parents or ancestors who were important. Like if everybody had Sub-Zero's backstory, that would bother me. The reason I liked the Mediterranean thing with Johnny right away is because green shadows are a little different from a fireball, in that effect is the same thing Nightwolf and Shao Kahn do. And Nightwolf and Shao Kahn happen to share an origin for their powers. They both use souls. Shao Kahn steals them. Nightwolf communes with his ancestors and asks to borrow their strength. And so they both get that green shadow effect and the ability to make projectiles, like to shape those Green Lantern constructs out of it too.
So
And Johnny, who doesn't have the training that Nightwolf and Shao Kahn have, who isn't doing it on purpose, he's just going by instinct. He gets the shadow kick. He gets that forward charge with after images, but all he can do with the energy is throw blobs of it. He can't like shape it into a weapon. And I like that he's doing the same thing they're doing, but more raw and untrained.
Right.
So that's what I like about the Mediterranean cult story. Now, what I actually don't like the way they used it in X as a Deus Ex Machina way for him to be stronger than Shinnok. What I would have done, and I've mentioned this before in previous episodes and on our Discord, is I think they should have revealed that the Mediterranean cult weren't good guys. They worshipped Hades, which is another name for Shinnok, and their souls are actually in the Nether Realm. And that would have done a couple things. The first thing it would have done is it would have explained the red shadows, because Johnny gets this fucking red shadow power when he's low health or upset. Sometimes it's an EX move, and sometimes it's a random thing, and sometimes it's a low health thing.
I think it's
different
it
every
started off
game.
as a random thing.
Right. It's different every game how you get the red, but it's canon that he has it. So what is the red? Because the one thing the red shadows always are is stronger than the regular shadows. So I think it would have made sense if the red effect was because the souls he's pulling from, and he doesn't know this, are tainted and evil. And so when he's like feeding on a negative emotion, like when he's angry or, desperate, then he gets that burst of strength, and he doesn't know what it is, but it's actually secretly a bad thing. And I think you could have taken that in a direction, because when Shinnok is the boss, then you can set up Johnny as the big hero, and he's marching in and he's thinking, all right, I've got this guy's number. And then you reveal that Shinnok can somehow control Johnny's powers better than Johnny can and beats him. And then you have a story where Johnny's the underdog and has to overcome this kryptonite. I think that would have been more interesting storytelling than giving him a fucking win button.
Get where you're coming from, but it's a bit angsty.
For
Johnny specifically. I appreciate the angle, but I don't.
How the character reacts to it.
It's
Johnny's
a lot.
Not the type of guy to angst. He's the type of guy who would I just want to see him get his ass kicked and then go back to the drawing board and be like, all right, I can still do this. I can still beat him. I just have to come at it a different way.
Well, for me,
I want to see him work harder for it, really.
I wasn't a fan of the fact that they just gave him the power and it was a kind of god killing.
Yeah.
It was like you said, it's Deus Ex Machina. They back it up in the ninth bio by saying this cult bred warriors for the gods, and so I guess logically speaking, Shinnok being a fallen god and whatnot, that is the kind of person that a warrior who works for the gods would theoretically be sicked on. So it kind of works for me. It's an instant win button, but there's some context behind it. So I let it slide.
I just don't think that it's good writing to have the boss be beaten so easily. Because neither Johnny nor Cassie really has to try hard to win, because they've got a power that, just sort of nullifies whatever advantage Shinnok has. And that's, I don't know, that just sort of sucks all the tension out of it. It would be better if they were the underdogs, instead of having a force field that nullifies his energy beams.
I guess, but it is kind of on another angle of... It's kind of a secondary angle of they're chosen ones, without being chosen ones. It just loses I think mystic aspect to it.
Because we've already had chosen ones in this franchise, I think it would be more cool if they were chosen ones.
No, I get that.
And then overcome that they were
it's
a red herring, and then they win anyway.
Well, it's the same way that you feel about that. That's the same way that I feel about people and their goddamned MacGuffin amulets of shut the fuck up. You have any idea how tired I am about all these fucking amulets in the franchise?
There are a lot of amulets.
So many amulets.
So I like the dragon medallion because it never actually is plot important. It's an aspect
of a character, yes.
It's important to Sub-Zero's backstory and his it has emotional significance to him, like a family heirloom. It's not something that helps him win fights, really.
It's not important to the plot the way that Raiden's Amulet of Dumb Fuckery and Shinnok's Amulet are.
Yeah.
But the thing is, there's just so many of them, Razor.
There are.
The first thing you fucking do in Deception is you find a fucking drug fisherman's amulet and you go give it back to him. Just too many amulets out of MK. Just get them out. That's all I'm asking. That's the only comparison
there
I'm
are
making.
there are far too many.
It's a familiar, overused trope. That's all. For what it's worth, X is very, very kind to Johnny in a lot of ways,
That's true.
and he is one of the best parts about story mode.
He is. He's in it less than 9 though, which is a shame. But he has way more intro quotes in arcade and versus play than I think any other character. So that, I guess, makes up for his lack of lines in story mode.
Well, what he gets is important enough.
That's true.
It's fun to see him actually as kind of a coach and a tutor to the
There
combat
is-
kids, and he has that great exchange with Sonya about like how she walked out on her family.
Yeah.
And if there is
it's-
one person you don't expect to see like giving lines about responsibility, it's Johnny. So
I do have
that
to
was
say,
a holy shit moment.
I'm very happy. The Johnny we get in MKX is really the Johnny we should have gotten after MK3 in the old timeline. Like, the guy who finally accepts responsibility and understands how serious the events of Mortal Kombat games are, but is still... Like, he's not a bummer. He didn't become a serious guy. He just became... He still jokes. He just became a guy who steps up to the plate when it's time.
You know what I want? The director's cut version of that scene between Johnny and Sub-Zero. So, we pretend to ambush you guys, right? And try to kidnap you. This is going to be amazing. Please stop talking. Conversations between Johnny and Sub-Zero with the benefit of no one else being around or interrupting. I like it.
Yeah, the Johnny in MKX is just Johnny with character development. It's something we've been waiting 2 decades for.
Johnny's become such a great character, so wonderful. Always entertaining, every game he's in. I would be disappointed if he's not in MK11, but it probably is time for him to take a little bit of a break.
I would be upset.
Yeah, I know.
Look, I understand that out of Cassie's parents, she plays the most like Johnny. So if you are going to start removing the parents and putting more emphasis on the kids...
It's logical. I hate to say it, but it is.
But I don't like Sonya, and I do like Johnny, so do it the other way.
I mean, they should probably both take a day off.
I guess, I don't know. Maybe... Can Johnny be DLC? That would be okay, right?
I wouldn't say no to that. No one would say no to that. Everyone would buy it. Everyone.
Absolutely,
That
everyone
seems
would
like
buy
a
it.
very frighteningly obvious choice now that I think about it. This is happening, isn't it? Oh, God.
It might be. I'm okay with it. As long as he gets to be in the game by the end. Like, Johnny's not a guy like Fujin, where I'm thinking he better be on the main roster because he needs to be in story mode. Don't you fucking DLC me on this. Johnny, I'll take his DLC because I don't... Like, Johnny doesn't need to be important, I just want Johnny.
I would like to see him in story mode as a... If
I mean,
he's going to be DLC.
He'll be an NPC even if he's not on the roster.
Yeah.
Because the role Johnny serves now in, like, the Special Forces and the Cassie's team is the kind of role that you would have him, like, standing in the background and saying some lines, but he doesn't need to be a playable character. Like, he's a natural...
Bull Right Joe.
He's got a natural NPC role now. But I want him to be playable by the end of the game's
because you never get
cycle.
tired of Johnny Cage.
Yeah, no,
Playstyle, personality. He's just become such an ingrained part of the series. Like I said, it's really hard to look back now for me and think, fucking hell. There was a game where we thought that no Johnny was a good idea. It's weird. It's fucking weird.
Yeah. And I'll tell you this, like, Johnny was my main in MK9.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
Yeah,
I saw a couple matches you were playing. He's a territory
He was always
character.
my go-to. Like, Jax was my second choice, My tag team was Johnny and Jax. But like Johnny wasn't my main in MKX anymore because like I've mentioned before on the main show that the way I play is to find the character who has a button mash combo. Like MK9, one of his combos was the same kick 4 times.
He's got one that's kind of like that, just a little bit in 10. It's just
See, Liu Kang
X forward X, and I think that's
yeah.
it. It's 3X.
Yeah, Liu Kang became the same kick 4 times guy in MKX, so Liu Kang became my main in MKX. But I still like MKX Johnny, like the brass knuckles punch forever combo.
Yes.
That's great. Stunt double as a variation is a brilliant idea. I think A-list is a bit of a downer. I think anytime you revolve a character around holding down a button to charge up,
I remember seeing like a list
not
of
going to
variations.
work out the way you hope it will.
A-list has been described as one of the tougher ones to actually use properly for through the entire cast.
Yeah.
I stick to stunt double.
Like, I love what they did with Johnny and X. He's just not my 4 kicks in a row guy.
That's fair.
But yeah, I want that kind of gameplay. Like, Johnny's moves are always really fun.
Cannot say very much about his ending in X because it's just sort of...
Johnny's ending in X cannot possibly be canon because it doesn't make sense.
It reeks of put there to fill space.
Here's the thing. There's a comparable ending in 9. In MK9, Kung Lao had an ending where he like meditates and realizes that he is the great Kung Lao reincarnated. And that can't be true because a reincarnation is the same soul in a new body.
That's in Shang's body.
Shang Tsung stole great Kung Lao's soul, yeah.
Been freaking face palming over that one since 2011.
Right. So that can't possibly be canon. And to its credit, MKX does not treat that ending as canon. Like, whenever Kung Lao talks about the great Kung Lao, he's not talking about himself, he's talking about a separate person.
Yes.
Yeah. So, fortunately, that ending is not canon, because they realized it doesn't work. Johnny's ending in X is an ending like that. And it's because the premise of his MKX ending is that he goes, man, I'm getting old, I should retire, but I don't want to. So I'm gonna search...
I think it's a bit more than that.
The secret of eternal youth.
Like, the line is, his life had turned out to be stranger than any science fiction film, but he knew the final scene was approaching. As in, he was starting to get afraid of dying.
Yeah. So he starts searching for eternal youth. And what he finds is a book on Shang Tsung's island that belonged to Shang that reveals how Edenians live so long. They live long because their ancestors fucked the gods. That immortality is just part of their bloodline. You can't learn that from a book.
Are you sure this isn't one of those Kama Sutra things there? You're sure this is not a book on god boning? I don't know.
Okay, but even if Johnny boned a god, he doesn't get to live forever. The kid does.
Maybe it's the right positions? I don't know.
You can't learn you're immortal because your parents are immortal from a book. That's all there is to it.
It's not an ending that I think they put a particular amount of intelligent thought into. It's there to fill space, sadly.
Yeah.
And I don't expect them to ever look back on this one ever again.
I wouldn't think so. But finishing moves. We should actually rewind a bit to MK9 to talk about those finishers first.
Alright.
Because... So MK9 had a lot of fatalities where they took a character's 2 most famous ones and mashed them into the same move. For example, Jax would rip off the arms and smash the head.
And it was weird. Because
The
he did it
problem,
first.
he smashed the head first. So they're already dead before he rips off the arms.
It was just fucking weird and awkward.
Yeah, that makes it dumb. Johnny's is okay-ish. So, he uppercuts the head off, and while it's still in the air...
He then rips the torso off and slams it onto the ground.
Right. And the head has landed, so when he slams the torso, it bounces the head back up, so he can catch the head and hold it out. Now, that's just showy enough that I'm okay with it.
It's still
But it's
a little
dumb. Yeah. It's a little dumb.
So, I take it you're more of a fan of the award goes too, then?
Yes. I actually really love that one.
It's the little pose he does afterwards.
Yeah.
After he's slammed it in.
And he yells, "Ho!"
And then just shoves the body over.
Yeah.
That is, I have to say, one of the things I'm really, really looking forward to about 11 if he's in. Because his fatalities are just getting funnier.
They are.
I was a huge fan of Here's Johnny.
Oh, yes. That was the next thing I was going to bring up, is that we finally got something where he says the line, "Here's Johnny!"
And it's also a reference to the fucking Shining.
Peeling a hole through the torso.
For a Jack Nicholson impression. Ah, how
And
wonderful does it get?
He doesn't finish. He doesn't rip them in half. He just leaves it as a hole.
It's already enough.
It is. I appreciate that slight bit of restraint because it's actually creative.
I wish I remembered more about his brutalities, because I never used any of his specifically.
Well, I remember one.
I think he's got like a throw that ends with a flip kicking their head off. I think that's one of them.
Something like that. What I specifically remember is that if you do the nut punch enough times, then the final one will hit the nuts so hard that their head comes off.
And their eyeballs are outstretched along with it.
Yeah. And that is fucking amazing.
MK's best character or MK's best character?
What I also love is his stunt double brutalities. Like, if you finish them with the stunt double shadow kick,
right,
it'll kick their torso off, and then both him and the image will do his win pose.
Neat.
I love that.
I guess that more or less brings us to a close, unless there's anything else that we've got.
We covered our hopes for MK11, I suppose.
He's pretty much himself in the Malibu comics. I mean, we've kind of touched on how wonderful Lyndon Ashby was to the character in the movie.
There is one little thing.
Sure.
9 and X costumes.
Were you happy with Ninja Mime?
We talked about the tattoo. His alternate in MK9, I love because... So they had done the tuxedo several times in a row at that point.
Yes.
What makes the MK9 version of the tux so great is that it's the same color scheme that he's wearing in the John Tobias comic book. It is teal and pink. And he's got the tie undone and just kind of dangling around his neck lazy-like. I really love anytime you reference the Tobias comics or the old lore really in any way, because so much of MK9 feels like it's disrespecting that old stuff that the times you do respect it become more valuable.
No, that's perfectly fair and valid. I should probably also be the cynical one and say, a quick callback to Shaolin Monks, his render looked terrible. I don't know what it was.
Yeah.
A lot of the Shaolin Monks renders looked absolutely incredible. Something was off about Johnny's. It was his head.
There's something with his hair and his hairline, like he looks a little baby face weird. Yeah. It's the same problem. It's the same problem that's affecting Raiden in the cutscenes. But, you win some, you lose some.
Truth.
It's also worth noting that in the render in the cutscenes in Shaolin Monks, he's wearing his MK4 outfit.
Was he actually?
Yeah, in-game, his outfit looks a little bit more like MK2, like he has the fuzzy wristbands instead of the guards, the plastic guards. And he has, instead of white dashes on his legs, he has just a solid blue stripe running down each one.
Huh.
Yeah. And he has a different belt in the in-game thing. Like, it's not just a straight blue band, it's got like a black square in the middle. It's almost like a boxing, like an Everlast belt. Which I liked. I used that idea for reference when I drew my version of Johnny Cage for MK2 in my own fan art, which is whatever. But the thing about the costumes that I really wanted to talk about, besides that I love the teal and pink color scheme in 9, not just because it's a reference to that comic, but because it's one of the few reminders in that game that this game takes place in the early 90s. Pastels were in.
I think they were kind of dying out at this point.
Well, like 1992, no, they were still pretty going strong.
I need photographic evidence. I think that they were kind of dying here. I remember this as being like a mid to late 80s thing, and by the start of the 90s, there was a lot of business suits without shirts going on still underneath. But I think the pastel colors were slowly dying away along with Duran Duran.
I don't know. I remember a lot of, like, windbreakers, and it's sort of... The pastel colors sort of evolved into a female-specific thing with, like, Lisa Frank notebook Trapper Keeper covers.
Please, don't mention
like
those.
that.
I'm going blind from the memories.
But I feel like 91, 92, 93 pastels were still here and there. But more than that, what I wanted to talk about was his MKX costumes, because I think they're actually hit or miss. Because he has 3 outfits.
I'm looking at 6.
One of them is MK9 again, the tournament outfit, which looks... I actually think it looks a little bit better than it did in 9 because his hair's modeled better. And he has more of a chin.
Yeah, but at the same time, he doesn't appear quite as clean-shaven in this model. And something about that throws it off. He looks a little bit scuzzy. I like the overall MK9 render a little bit better. It's also a large part of MKX's aesthetic. It's a very gritty game.
Yeah, everybody, like, the beads of sweat on everybody in X and stuff like that. I think what I like about it is that MK9 Johnny looks weird when the glasses come off. There's something off about his face.
This is truth.
And MKX Johnny does not have that problem. But the other costumes are just kind of a military bulletproof vest twice in a row.
They do kind of blend together. No, it's
I think... Well, here's what I think would have been nice. If you look in the concept art, like in the crypt and stuff,
right.
His primary, where he's got the vest over the blue wife beater or the shirt, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a wife beater. It has sleeves, but it's got kind of a low collar. That blue shirt was supposed to have some kind of graphic on it, and I think that would have added something. I feel like his primary is just a little bit bland, and that graphic would have been nice to have.
I think I might have taken one of the other two as his primary.
The bulletproof vest outfit, the one that he wears in Chapter 1, you can't unlock it unless you fucking do something nearly impossible online. You have to win fucking 10 matches in a row in a rando King of the Hill.
That's the kind of thing that you do.
It's the only costume in the game. It's the only costume in the game I've never unlocked.
I have it.
Part of that is because I didn't bother to try because I don't like it that much.
That's fair.
I wish that they'd attach something else to that instead of costumes, because I actually want costumes.
Was one of those other ones a Predator outfit?
Yes, there
Okay,
was,
that's what I'm looking at.
yeah, and then there's Ninja Mime and the Brazilian thing, and
Well,
I don't
Ninja Mom's
know.
clearly the big winner here. Come on.
My problem with Ninja Mime is that it's all mime, no ninja.
Well, it's kind of skin tight.
Yes, but I don't know. It could have been more ninja. That's all.
The black leggings don't do it for you? Okay, but...
Yeah, I'm still getting a mime vibe from that.
So... Anything for Lyndon Ashby, particularly?
I love you and I miss you, Lyndon.
So do we all.
You know, I actually thought that, oh god, what's Starship Trooper guy's name?
Asking the wrong dude.
Damn it. Season 2 of Legacy. That guy. I thought he was a pretty decent Johnny.
Didn't have a problem with him, just the material surrounding him.
Yeah. Like, I know there are people who preferred Matt Mullins from Rebirth in Season 1. I always thought Mullins was a little too regular guy. Like, he wasn't bombastic enough, he wasn't Johnny enough.
Do we have anything to say for the poor schmuck who played him for 5 seconds in Annihilation?
Sorry about your neck, bruh.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, but...
I mean, look, if I was Lyndon and I read that I was going to die in the first scene, I wouldn't come back either.
No, it's understandable. So, do we have any more questions for our channel?
Yeah, we probably have a ton of questions.
We should probably get to a few of those.
Yeah.
Alright.
Alright, so... First we've got, from Down for Reality, our good friend Redman. How would you make Hornbuckle a character in MK11?
Well, I've always maintained it doesn't take much. I would design him as a servant of Onaga's first and foremost. I'd make that, solidified. Give him a predominantly green color scheme. Possibly have something to do with kickboxing. Maybe give him a lance. Make him look like some form of guardsman. Change his name completely. Basically, a dude wearing green is the only similarity to what we know as Hornbuckle as a concept. It's a wide open arena. This does not need to be Liu Kang wearing green pants, nor should it be. It's a lot to work with. But that's about it. Just some dude working for Onaga that looks like he can hold his own in a fight with kind of a green motif. That's all.
Right, so I pretty much agree with all of that. The one thing that's sort of important to me is that because Hornbuckle does have this legacy of a Liu Kang sprite originally, what I would do is I would look at, so Liu Kang is based on Bruce Lee.
Right.
And, Johnny Cage is based on Jean-Claude Van Damme. You can look at Bo Rai Cho as being based on Jackie Chan's Drunken Master roles. There are elements of Kung Lao's gameplay in the newer games that are sort of reminiscent of Donnie Yen as Ip Man. So I would keep going with that legacy. Hornbuckle would be based on a famous martial arts actor. As a reference to the fact that Liu is Bruce Lee, I would make Hornbuckle Jet Li. So I would look at Jet Li movies and base all his gameplay on that. And that's basically the gist of it. I mean, story-wise, he is already established as a worshiper of Onaga. So really, I mean, I'm hoping Onaga's in 11, but yeah, I would not bring Hornbuckle back unless the game had Onaga in it.
It's kind of a prerequisite, really.
Yeah. And I basically push that worship angle and that he's a servant of him.
All right, next question from Smoke Man.
Smokeman asks, how would you make Su Hao a character in MK11? And the short version is that I wouldn't.
Bitch, please.
The long version is if I were going to. I've said before, I would just make him more like Bane. Like, emphasize how the artificial heart is a power-up, like it's a source of power that he has moves that buff him. And Su Hao was already a very wrestling and grappling heavy character, so I'd emphasize that a lot more. I'd give him like more command grabs. Maybe I'd give him chain grabs like Grundy had in Injustice 1. But he'd be very much a guy who, like, as a fight goes on, he has a move where he buffs, where he uses his artificial heart to pump more, I don't know, radiation or whatever into his veins, so he glows more and his muscles get bigger, very much like Bane. Just Bane, Bane, Bane. He'd be Mongolian Chinese Bane.
I would deprive him entirely of the stupid officer's cap. I think I'd put him in more military-esque garb. Give him a bunch of unnecessary medals a la North Korean generals. Or amulets, if you will.
Magic jewelry.
Magic jewelry. Nah, shit posting on that one.
Just regular jewelry.
He's better off dead. I don't know. I would probably try to give as much red dragon motif as possible. Like maybe a blazer with like the logo on the back or something. I don't know. I can't say that I've put a lot of thought into what he'd be like in a future game because I never expect to see him come back ever again. And to be really honest about it, if he had to show up in MK11, it should be as a corpse. I don't think we should bring this guy back. Sorry, Chrome.
I do wish... I like the red... I've said before I like the Red Dragon as a concept more than the Black Dragons.
But there's just so much better to work with.
There are. It's just... There are no members. All you have is Dagon and two guys who suck.
That's about it. Although, to be really fair about it, the MKX comic gave us a lot of background grunts, and what I like about that fact is, although they're wearing a bunch of high-tech gear that make them look like a bunch of cool, sophisticated ninjas, they're really just a bunch of punk pieces of shit.
Well,
that set things on fire with Zippo lighters.
Those grunts are in both Shaolin Monks and Armageddon already.
Yep.
But the comic does really sort of push sort of a henchman incompetence angle.
Yes. Oh god, not
which
the
is
bees.
A weird direction to go because I want, like, for Kenshi and Takeda's subplot to matter, shouldn't the Red Dragon be intimidating?
Well, their leader is.
Yeah, what I'm saying is that I wish Dagon had a support staff who could actually be interesting. Like, I feel like a faction isn't cool until they have more than one member that's cool. Like, the reason Lin Kuei are the best faction is because it's not just Sub-Zero. You also have Sector Cyrax, Smoke, a second Sub-Zero, and Frost. It's an entire roster of cool characters.
I see what you did there. I don't approve.
That one
Sorry.
was for me. That one was for me.
So, Battlesticks asks, after Cyrax spared Johnny's life in the MK9 timeline, I was hoping Cage would work towards restoring Cyrax's humanity in MKX as retribution. What character moments would you have added in MKX based solely off MK9's story?
Based solely off MK9, what would I have put in X? Noob and Havoc working together to conquer the Netherrealm. Although I'm not sure it would fit. That's just what I want. No, I would have liked to have seen Sub-Zero's retaking of the Lin Kuei on camera. I would have liked to have seen more exploration of the Revenants and their personalities, because as it stands right now, they just come across as people who have been forced to be evil by Quan Chi's influence, and I wish they were more their own persons. I would have... The big one is Smoke. His discovery that he is an Enenra should have completely changed everything for him. But he's just there, and he just says it once.
Yeah.
Because if you die and go to hell, and what you learn down there, you were always a demon, then you have a completely different relationship to the Netherrealm than all these undead guys you're hanging out with. Like, this is actually your home. And you're not a revenant, you're just returning to your true form.
Still the kind of thing that I hope gets explored from an MK11, even though I'm probably just going to be holding my breath at this point.
Yeah.
I'm going to add to those, I don't think that Cyber Sub-Zero being returned to a human form is the kind of thing that should have been explored exclusively in comic form. The comic does a good job of fitting those pieces back together, but I think that was deserving of a scene in itself in the game. Would have been nice.
I think Sub-Zero in general is...
shafted by X just a little bit?
Yeah, dearly underserved by MKX story mode.
It's like they gave him the privilege of coming back to life, but that and the T scene aside, it didn't do a lot for him as a character.
Yeah,
That's also in comparison to MK4, but...
It feels like they didn't have anything for Sub-Zero, but they just wanted to apologize for turning him into a robot because so many people didn't like it. And so it's all very much like, hey, remember Deadly Alliance? He's back to that again.
Yeah, that was
it. You guys forgive us, right? And I do, but I want more. They
trusted us to, like, assume that everything that happened with him becoming Grandmaster had happened again this time. It was a silent apology.
It's very much like we already told that story once, so we don't need to tell it again.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, but I do want to see it. The last time you told it, I didn't see it either. It was all text. Show me, damn it!
I do want to see him taking Sector's punk head off. It's a shame that didn't happen. So, Evan K., what's your favorite piece of pointless headcanon?
My favorite piece of pointless headcanon is that I believe the headband Liu Kang wears is the same headband Great Kung Lao wore, and that the reason he didn't have the headband in MK1 is because at that time Goro had it, and was like keeping it as a trophy, so when he beat Goro, he took it. That's my favorite piece of pointless headcanon.
We're defining headcanon as a thing that we believe is canon and actually is not, yes?
Yeah, a thing that we basically made up ourselves or assume that isn't actually said anywhere, yeah.
Okay. The entirety of Reptile's life is abject misery, and he deserves better, damn it. It's an ongoing running gag that we all have, that, like, Reptile, he must spend most of his time drunk. We've seen in the comics that he sleeps on the floor. He's served several masters who have no intention of keeping their word with him.
Let's be clear, he cries himself to sleep on the floor.
He absolutely
and when someone
does.
Walks in the room, he immediately assumes they're there to kill him.
Yes. He probably has not had a good night's worth of sleep in years. So no, it shouldn't be my favorite because it's horrible, but it's impossible to divorce Reptile from the image of misery now.
To be fair, the whole premise of his role under Kodal is that Kodal actually treats him decent.
It backs this up. It really does.
Like, he should be finally some semblance of happy.
Should be. And for what it's worth, I hope he is.
He's still not getting laid.
Well, no, that's the big thing, isn't it?
I feel like at this point, Chameleon should meet him and go, no, I'm not attracted to you.
I think she can do better. It's unfortunate.
Literally the last living member of her species, and she can do better.
Maybe there's still sperm in those cove carcasses. I'm sorry, that was terrible. Alright, so... Not a question about MK-specific lore, but rather about the future of the series as a whole, asks Bumblebee. How long do you think it'll take them to wrap up this new timeline? I think the answer to that is 12.
I've said before, I think it should be a trilogy, and 11 should be the last game.
I think it's
I know
going to be.
Cyborg is very much against that. I don't care what he thinks. But I'm not confident 11 will be the last game. I think maybe 12.
I think it's going to be 11. They seem to do these things in trilogies, and it would be odd to tell a 4-point story. This feels like they're wrapping up toward conclusion. I'm positive 11 will be an ending point for something. Who knows?
It's just, it feels to me like there's too many things to wrap up.
We might get some of it in text. We might not get any of it at all.
Because
Because
you've got to touch on Onaga, you've got to touch on whatever version, whatever Armageddon looks like in this timeline. You've got to touch on the Dream Lady who's possessing Jade, and that's 3 different things that also have to happen in a game that has to address Dark Raiden going to war with Kotal's Outworld. And I just question, can you really put all of those in one game, or is that 2 games worth of material?
what I think is probably going to happen is something similar to the way we all thought MKX was going to be, by and large, retelling MK4. It did in the first 5 minutes of the game. It's not going to make everyone happy, but I have a feeling that the first 10 minutes of MK11 story mode, whatever it is, I don't know. I hope it's not like Liu Kang and Katana get dropped and then other things happen, but they do tend to wrap things up now surprisingly quickly.
There's 5 fucking potential factions.
Yeah.
And you have to, if you're going to finish off the timeline, you have to resolve all 5. And maybe, like, because Sean Kittleson tied Onaga to the Red Dragons, and you can't really deal with that off screen without neutering Kenshi and Takeda's whole storyline. And you can't just not do the Dream Lady. They've been teasing it for 2 games in a row. And maybe you could go without mentioning Armageddon, but if you're finishing the timeline, it should be some form of Armageddon, shouldn't it? Like, isn't that what the Dream Lady's all about?
One hopes or thinks.
So I don't know. It feels like too much stuff. But I would like it to be a trilogy, and then do something new, a different timeline or another reboot. I don't know what form. Maybe merge the old timeline and the new one to create something that means you have new lore, but you don't have to repeat MK1 again.
Crisis on Infinite Combats.
Exactly. So that's my hope, that 11 is some kind of Crisis thing and 12 is a whole new lore. But
that is the way I feel they're going as well.
We'll see. So Evan K asks, Sato or Chaos Realm? And that's the whole question. So I guess he's asking which we like better. I like Chaos Realm. And I think Sato has a lot of really cool imagery, but all the characters from there except Hotaru are garbage.
In the interest of the spirit of the discussion, I will be brief, orderly, and respond with a single word. Yes. Make of that
Very
what
nice.
you will.
Very nice. DJ Timmy G asks, what do you think religion and politics are in Earthrealm after the Khan invasion? That's actually, I mean, it's an interesting question, because the whole premise of Earthrealm is it's the real world, magic is a secret, and then you know, a hole opens up in the sky over New York City and dragons attack.
I think humanity continues to interpret it the way each specific religion wishes to interpret it. No one individual, race, ethnicity, creed is willing to sit back and admit, I was wrong.
Yeah, that's true.
No.
Like, no matter what science reveals about the way the universe works, all it's ever going to do is give the religions that already exist more to argue about between themselves.
So what you're going to have is a bunch of different religions and faiths going, this is our gods doing this or not doing X. There's just a lot more yelling.
Yeah, status quo has a way of maintaining itself.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we obviously know that the U.S. military understands realms exist and takes it seriously and has put Sonya in charge of a whole thing. But other than that, I don't think there's been much change to religion or politics in Earthrealm. I wonder, I mean, you would assume that they did clean up New York, right? Like, you can still live there.
So how do we feel if after Armageddon they form new Elder Gods? Don't think that's a thing that they can do.
Yeah, I'm not sure, like, you can... So, we know the Elder Gods can promote gods to Elder God status, and we know the gods can turn mortals into gods, because that's what Blaze's prize does, and they created it. I feel like it's a pretty big jump to go from mortal to Elder God in one jump.
I kind of feel that the Elder Gods are as they are, as in they've always been, or they have always been since they split off from the one being. They probably don't have the ability to make more. And
Yeah, I mean, there's... So, it's sort of like... I would think that when Raiden was promoted to Elder God status, he was still kind of weaker than the rest. Like, they can't actually make him one of them. They can get close enough. Like, it was mostly a status and title thing. Like, it was mostly, you get to come to the council meetings and have a voice now.
I don't think they can make new Elder Gods. They can promote existing gods to their position, but they're never going to be the kind of universal dragons lurking in the background that they are. You know?
Yeah. Yeah. So Battlesticks asks...
No questions. Just wanted to say it's dope to have the Lost back, and Liu Kang was a perfect choice. Well, we thank you very much. And yes, I promise that from now on, there will be an MP3 link of the audio in the description upon upload. I did that with the Shang one. This will be no different. There'll be an upload on archive.org. There is every week. Well, every time there's an episode of these. And eventually, BC gets onto putting them onto iTunes. So there will always be links.
Right.
Thank you very much for the compliment.
Yes, thank you. We appreciate that you enjoy what we do here. Rain Reptile asks, do you guys think we'll see non-canon costumes as main costumes again? I thought that was a bit misleading on NRS's part regarding their decision to do that in MKX.
Well, it really fucking worked, didn't it?
I liked it.
No one saw that shit happen. It was clever.
I actually really like the non-canon primaries. I think it's probably a good idea for the primary costume to be the most classic version of a character that fans expect to see, and then for their weirdo whatever development they've gone through costumes to be the alternates. I think that allows you to give the game a public face that is what casuals expect without hurting the lore any. Because those costumes are non-canon. I don't think the order that the costumes are in when you pick them matters that much, really. Like, which one the primary is and which one the alternate is not important to me. But it is important to marketing, because the primaries are the first one you see.
Brand recognizability is a big factor for all of these companies. And it helps there.
Right. And as far as it being misleading, I mean, that was the point. It was to prevent spoilers.
They wanted us to believe, coming back into this, that Liu Kang and Kung Lao and Jax and Sub-Zero and everyone was going to be alive again. And they did a good job of pulling the wool out of over our eyes, because not only were most of these people not back, Scorpion was. It was actually a really brilliant red herring. I can't blame anyone for being a little bit miffed at it, but it was very clever. This is above and beyond like fake silhouettes on a select screen. That was actually a really good a really good example of fucking us all up and making us think and making us angry.
Yeah. I mean, I wasn't angry. I thought it was cool.
I was just like, you motherfuckers! You clever motherfuckers! Cojones on them. And kudos to them.
So that was quite a few. Do we want to save the rest for the next episode?
I think so, yeah, because specifically the next one requires a bit of thought from me. Good question, Battlesticks, but we'll get to there.
Right,
so,
right.
That'll be it for tonight. Thank you all very kindly for tuning in. To, of course, as always, thank Testermite for hosting us. Charybdis for putting up excellent op-ed articles. Great article there. I suggest you go and give his article on who should and should not be an MK11. Personal preference aside, agander. It's on testermite.com. It's a great read.
I read that article. It was pretty good. I think in the comments to that article, there was a lot of overreaction. I think people assumed that when he said, it's okay if your favorites sit out, he meant all of your favorites, but he didn't. He was saying, like, some people. You know?
Oh, no, man. First couple of responses were just, yo, fuck that, I want my character back in. Man, get some objectivity. Everyone needs to breathe and relax a little while.
I mean, everybody comes at it with their own maturity level.
Thank you very much for getting caged. We appreciate having you here.
Good night, everybody. And always remember, Johnny Cage is not afraid to die.
You won't be either if you prepare yourself. Prepare yourself. Okay, I'm gonna stop now. Have a good night, folks.
Prepare yourself.